Hello and welcome. Wherever you are in the world today, thank you for joining us for the Rise Traveler, unpacking conversations of sustainable travel. We are here to talk to eco-minded and socially conscious travelers, diversity and inclusion specialists, wildlife conservationists, environmental activists, and anyone using travel as a way to uplift and inspire. Together, we will go a step beyond the Instagram-ready world of travel and take a look at how travel can be a source of growth and development for all people and all communities. This podcast is an extension of the Rise Travel Institute, a 501c3 nonprofit committed to empowering young travelers through educational programs, research, study tours, and scholarships. Visit risetravelinstitute.org to learn more. And now, here's your host, Amy Hager.
Hello, 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 wherever you are in the world today. Thank you for joining us on the Rise Traveler, unpacking conversations of sustainable travel. With me today is Laëtitia, joining me from Montreal, Canada. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
I'm so excited to dive into your background, your family history, your experiences, and kind of how you're seeing things as they unfold in the travel world, especially around immigration and foreign policy here in the US. But before we get too deep into all of what's going on now, let's take a background check with you and see what's been going on. Give us a little bit more about your upbringing and your childhood and flow us into the business that you started for yourself as well.
Awesome. So my name is Laëtitia Damonsing. I'm really happy to be here. I'm born and raised in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, so French Canadian. And my parents immigrated from the island of Mauritius, which is on the east coast of Africa near Madagascar
Okay.
in the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
So they immigrated in the late 80s. I'm born in the beginning of the 90s. And I've always lived in Montreal. No, I'm lying. I lived in Montreal for most of my life, but I lived abroad for 5 years. So at 21, I decided to go live in Brazil to work in marginalized communities. Basically, I went to McGill in international development studies and international relations to study IDS and international relations. And I decided that I wanted to go have an experience abroad to really understand what's happening on the grounds, understanding, how colonization has affected different societies, how other people live, like just out of curiosity and interest. And so I went to Brazil. It was a World Cup in 2014. I grew up playing soccer. Yeah.
Fun.
Soccer has always been, the anchor of my family, French African family. We love soccer so much. We call it football. And so decided to go to Brazil 2014 World Cup. And I decided to work in marginalized communities that we commonly know as the word favelas, but not necessarily the best term. We should use the word comunidades, which mean communities in Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
So moved to Rio, and at 21, that really shaped me as a woman. It was such a deeply inspiring experience, but also overwhelming in the best way possible because sometimes you see things that you can't necessarily unsee. You understand how lucky you are to be born in a country like Canada, that your parents left, Mauritius and gave you better opportunities. And going to Brazil really made me realize that these kids living in like struggle and hardship could have been me. I mean, they look like me, skin tone, same look. I was just lucky enough to be born somewhere else. And that really, stayed with me in the sense that I was given that opportunity, but it could have been me there.
Yeah.
So I think it makes you really grateful for what you have and intentional with the way that you want to lead your life. So lived in Brazil for a bit, and then after that, I graduated McGill because I took a semester off to go to Brazil. I forgot to do that. Moved to Paris, and I wanted to work in my field. So I wanted to work for an international organization, so either the UN, the OIF, the World Health Organization, something that operates in the sphere of international relations. And I ended up working at the Canadian Embassy in Paris, which was even better because I got to experience firsthand how international relations are built.
Mhm.
So I worked at as the head of as the assistant of the head of the political section
Mhm.
uh, for some time there, and that was really really eye-opening on how international relations happen, how public policies are built, international policies are built, and that really impacted my career and my worldview. Then after that, I decided to go backpack through Southeast Asia. So I went to Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. And after that, I moved to Australia, worked for the Canadian consulate,
Okay.
and that was really, really fun. So after 5 years abroad, I decided to come home. But it really, really shaped the woman that I am, and I would do it all over again.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like that you've really gone about utilizing the travel experiences that you've been able to have to influence then obviously who you are today. Clearly that automatically happens, right? We're all humans. Our experiences are what really influences us. And so now that you own a business, how did you come up with this concept and really decide to this was what you were going to do now?
So I have a business. It's called DoDo Bazaar, and we operate in the sphere of the circular economy, circular fashion.
Okay.
Always been, as much as like I'm a super nerd and I love my history, my politics, my social change, and my laws and my policies. I'm also somebody that is really, really, really into fashion. And I love fashion so much. For me, it's a form of self-expression. And I always say that I view fashion as a way to express your inside, like what's happening inside outwardly. So I see fashion as like something I know, like in the world, it's seen as something that is very vain and superficial, but I see it as like really a vehicle for self-expression.
Yeah.
So going abroad, when I lived in Brazil, actually volunteered at one of the communities, and it was called Jardim Gramacho. And Jardim Gramacho was actually before I got there, because by the time I got there, everything was eradicated. There was no more landfill, but it was a landfill, and a lot of people lived off that landfill.
Okay.
So a lot of kids would go there every day, collect waste, and then resell it. And
Oh,
so when you learn that, you understand that waste is not just garbage, waste is not just waste. There is a waste economy.
yeah.
Garbage or what we think is no longer useful is actually one still useful. You just need to repair it. You need to use the reverb. So
Right.
repair, reuse, recycle, reinvent, repurpose. So it really opened, that was the first seed that was planted. Oh,
Yeah.
like you could do stuff with garbage or waste, and I say garbage because not everything is garbage. And then I traveled through Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and I understood that people were so creative with
Mhm.
everyday objects, that in North America, given that we consume so much and we have
Yeah.
everything that we want at our disposition, or for us
Yeah,
to
at
use
our fingertips.
at our fingertips. That's really really good, like term.
Yeah.
um we just have one thing for everything, but for them, their brains go to like, I have this, it's a resource, it's something I should use, how can I repurpose it to turn it into something else? And that idea really fascinated me.
Yeah.
I was in Thailand at some point, and I was eating a pad thai.
Mhm.
Look up, and they made a lampshade out of a Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket. And I was
Oh,
like, wow, yeah, I know. I was eating my pad thai and I had like a light bulb moment. I was like, that is genius.
yeah.
Like they repurposed that bucket, and
Yeah.
it's a lampshade, and it was really, really cool. And it was like street food in Thailand. And I was like, that's really genius because one, it's really cool. One, it's funny. It's like
Yeah.
quirky, weird. It
Yeah.
makes people think.
Well, and
But
it's also making that statement again of as we have everything at our fingertips, what would be garbage of a chicken bucket is going to be useful to someone else. And it's taking that pause to figure out how else can I use this now that the use that I intended it for is done. What
Mhm.
else can I do with this thing? And I think that question of what else is such an important question.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I came back from my 5 years abroad, I knew that I no longer wanted to work in the diplomatic world or international relations at that time and point. I'm not saying it's not something I will revisit after, like in my 40s and my 50s,
Yeah.
but I had this strong inner knowingness that I need to start something that is very aligned with me, and that was going to be part of my purpose on this earth. And so I started my business, and funny enough, it like exploded and it grew so quickly. It was during the pandemic. I started in June 2020, and people really, really were looking for like a way to have like a greener closet, have a more intentional relationship with fashion, uh, how to, try to choose, slow fashion or secondhand over fast fashion. So there was a huge market in it. And I just kind of realized that those were part of my many gifts and talents, and that people wanted to buy. And now I live from that. But I don't think that without going abroad, I would have started DoDo Bazaar. DoDo Bazaar is like a culminating point of all my experiences, because going abroad allowed me to, well, I mean, it made me a more confident person. It allowed me to gain so many soft skills that are so good on the job market, or even as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. You learn communication skills, you learn leadership, so you could lead a team for your business. You learn how to communicate with clients, for partnerships, for collaborations. You
Yeah.
learn adaptability. I mean, adaptability and problem solving is something you really need as an entrepreneur. If you
Yes.
don't have those skills, you are in trouble. So
Uh,
I think that going abroad and all the experiences have really shaped me to pursue entrepreneurship. And yeah.
well, and I think again, those experiences they've really shaped you. And I'm a little bit curious though, can you dive in on how being a woman of color, how being an immigrant, and you said it yourself, right? You are lucky that you were born where you were born, and it was very clear when you did travel that your life could have been extremely different. I mean, how dive into a little bit more about how does that really shape your view and how you present yourself and how you open conversations? Because I think that's important.
Hmm. So other than DoDo Bazaar, I also do a lot of public speaking in the sphere of cultural exchange and studying abroad. And
Mhm.
my focus is often being a woman of color in that world, and the importance of having more diversity abroad. Because when I was abroad, whether I was in Brazil, in France, in Australia, when I'd say, "Hey, I'm Laëtitia, I'm Canadian," they'd be like, "Yeah, but like you're not Canadian. Like, what are you?" And I'm like,
Yeah, they're questioning you.
I'm 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 Canadian. Like, I'm born in Canada. Like, yes, my parents are from the island of Mauritius, but like, yes, I'm Mauritian. I'm very Mauritian in my values and the way that I like, am as a human being, but I'm also very Canadian. Like, that's how I grew up. That's how I live. Like, I am Canadian. And so I realized that a lot of expats were not people of color. They were all,
Mm,
and I would meet like that one random Black French person, like
right.
one random, British person that their family are from, the West Indies. And that to me was really mind-boggling. I was like, wow, like I'm even like different in the space of being abroad as an expat.
Yeah.
And so I grew up, some background story. I grew up with not a lot of money. My parents immigrated from Mauritius. It was a lot of like financial struggle. Life was not really necessarily easy. There was a lot of lack and scarcity, and I was the eldest daughter. So I
Mm,
really learned how to figure it out. Like if I want something, I wasn't going to ask my mom and my dad. It was I had to figure it out as the eldest daughter. Like you want to make it happen, go get it.
make it happen. Yeah.
Um, so these experiences, as much as like they were necessarily easy, have really shaped who I am. And so I went for it. I decided, hey, I want to go live abroad. Funny story, when I was 12, we were playing in a snowbank with like my friends, and we were girls and we were all obsessed with soccer. They were like Persian, Salvadorian. So we were all like from immigrant diasporas. And so we were all fascinated by soccer. And I told them, hey, one day when it's the World Cup in Brazil, I'm gonna go. I said that at 12. And so
Yeah,
at 20,
can't
21,
have it.
whenever they announced, I think they announced it like 8 or 4 years before. When they announced that it was going to be in Brazil, I was like, okay,
Yeah, to do
I
it.
need to go. I need to go. This is my sign. Like I said
Yeah.
at 12 in that snowbank that I was going to go. I need to go. And it's so funny because when I went, the two girls wrote to me. They're like, Laëtitia, remember when you said that in the snowbank? Like you're actually in Brazil. I was like, I
Yeah.
know. Like I did it.
Mhm.
So all of this to say that I've always been like, I've always had that like go-getter energy.
Mhm.
So I decided I want to go to Brazil. I took the semester off because McGill did not offer any opportunities to go study in Rio, and I really wanted to do it. So I said, okay, I'm going to postpone my education by 6 months, a semester, and
Yeah.
I'll graduate 6 months later, and it's not going to change anything, but I'm going to gain so much experience, so many soft skills, and it's so worth it.
Yeah.
Um, so I moved to Brazil, but I had to work for that. My parents were not able to afford paying me being abroad, live having this. My daughter wants to go have this experience. Like it's not a thing. They were not able to afford for that. So
Right.
I had to work, put money aside, see how much it would cost, organize everything on my own. And single-handedly, Brazil has changed my life.
Right.
But I came from a background where kids that look like me don't do that. They don't have these opportunities. It's not as if they can look at their parents and say, hey, I want to go study in Barcelona. I
Yeah.
would love to have parents that, but that's not, those were not the cards that were handed to me. And those are not the cards that are handed to a lot of people that come from lower socioeconomic background. The
Right.
only difference between me and these kids is that I had a really strong will. I'm really stubborn in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So I went for it.
Yeah.
But I realized that one of my many purposes on life is to be a symbol of representation and show others that look like me, that come from where I come from, that they also can do it
Yeah.
and they also deserve a seat at the table because I did it. So I'm a symbol of representation that, yeah, if I did it, you can do it. And I didn't grow up having people like, I did not grow up seeing these expat migratory movements as like something that looks like people that look like me can do that. The only
Yeah.
migratory movement that I saw from where I come from is immigration, you know, but you can also be an expat as a person of color. Even though your parents immigrated, you are Canadian, you can also be an expat. So I do a lot of public speaking to make going abroad more diverse.
Mhm.
My experience as a woman of color.
I love that. And so then I'm curious in the travels that you've had, have you ever had to weigh your identity or your background in deciding on whether to travel to a country, including the US? And I know given the current policies towards immigrants and travelers, it's not the most friendliest here in the US. But I'm curious, even before that, were there any situations or any times that you really had to make a decision because of your background to go somewhere or to not go somewhere?
Mhm. So my family and we grew up camping on the East Coast of the States, so from upstate New York all the way down to the Carolinas.
Hmm.
And we would go every summer. Every summer we'd pick a new coastal city and we'd go. So whether it's like Wildwood, New Jersey, Virginia Beach in Virginia, Hampton Beach in New Hampshire, we went everywhere. Um, there was one summer after 9/11. Things were obviously tense politically and socially, rightfully so. Something very deeply
Yeah.
traumatic shook the United States and the world in general.
World, yeah.
We went camping and we never had any issues at the border because obviously they have a system where they see that you've been in and out, and it's always been for camping and for vacation and
Right.
tourism. But that year, my dad was driving and my mom was next to him, and my brother and I were in the back. And they questioned us on our last name. So they said, "Oh, where's Damonsing from?" And then my dad was like, "Oh, we're from the island of Mauritius, but we're Canadian citizens," which is crazy because they're Canadian citizens. They've had a Canadian passport since the 90s. They immigrated in 1987, 1989. They are not Mauritian. I mean, they are Mauritian of identity, like culturally, but in terms of like their passport, they are
Yeah.
Canadian citizens with a Canadian passport. So our
Yeah.
last name was not relevant to that information, to that situation. So my dad says, "Oh, we're from the island of Mauritius." He's like, "Oh, what's the background of Damonsing?" So my dad said, "We're racially mixed. We have ancestors from like Europe, from Africa, from India, and from China. But this last name is of Indian origin, from India." I said, "Okay, cool. Next question is, are you Muslim?" And we're like, "Well, no, we're Christian." But
Hmm.
that's not relevant because we could have been Muslim and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with her last name.
Yeah.
And what was funny is that they were not interested in speaking to my mom and I. They were really interested in speaking to my dad and my brother, who were like closer to the window.
Yeah.
And to me, that is really like telling on, the way that men of color are perceived, like even more as a threat. Like my mom and I were not really threatening, but my brother and my dad were seen as a threat.
Yeah.
And it really had this like heavy underlying tone of like discrimination and, isolating us because we had an immigrant background when there was nothing wrong with it.
Hmm.
So that was very interesting and not okay at all.
Yeah.
I don't think growing up then I've had a lot of issues because I did work for the Canadian government.
Yeah.
So I've never really had issues, but I do remember that really
Stuck
scaring me.
with
And
you.
then now with the current climate and all the fear mongering that's happening,
Yeah.
having an immigrant last name is not to your advantage. When you're not doing anything, you're contributing to the economy, you're participating in society, you're a good
Right.
person, you're a good human being. Just having that, can be a reason to be discriminated. And it's always been like that. I'm not just saying just because of the current climate, but I do think that policies that are, coming into action or happening right now are reinforcing these
Mm.
biases and, negative perceptions of immigrants and, the
Right.
whole fear of the other. Um, yeah, I feel like we're entering like scary times and people should really reflect and check themselves, quote unquote, on
Right.
the way that they perceive other people, like the other.
Right. Well, so dive in just a little bit about current times.
Mhm.
This past story is a really, really good story to share, and I'm I'm sad that you had to have that experience and that you've had that experience or that questioning, and that there's others that are having that as well.
Mhm.
With everything that's going on currently in the US with the US immigration and foreign policies, I mean, how is all of this sitting with you? What do you see as maybe the solution or how we break this divide? Because it really is being created to create divide. And to me, that doesn't feel like that's aligned for how you see the world and through your experiences.
Mhm. I think right now, I mean, not right now, but like it's always kind of, been like that. We're really, you know, I'm saying we're, but like governments are putting in place policies and taking radical action, like based out of fear,
Mhm.
um, out of like suspicion, out of a lack of trust in others and in the goodness of others.
Yeah.
Um, and so is it fear mongering or fear mongering? Fear mongering.
Yeah, fear mongering.
Very fear mongering. But I do think that the alternative or the answer to that is to have more human-centered policies, right? So
Mhm.
really placing the human being or the well-being of each individual and human at the forefront and at the center of how we build policies, whether internationally or internally or
Mhm.
externally, however we decide. But I think that human-centered policies will ensure that people are taken into account. And right now they're not, I do, you know, they're using the whole pretense that, a lot of these people that they are arresting, these human beings that they're putting in prisons and shipping away and breaking their families and, ripping them apart from their kids and their wives and their partners, that these people are bad because they are in cartels or they're drug dealers or they've come to infiltrate the United States.
Right.
That, if it is a case, is a tiny percentage. Like they are just breaking down on illegal immigration because they don't want other people there, you
Yeah.
know? And it's coming out of fear. It's coming of not liking the other. These people are, people that are getting arrested and stopped are either like international students that are literally there to study
Yeah.
and either stay in the United States and become doctors and lawyers and contribute greatly to society,
Right.
or their fathers that work in construction or work at, a nearby superstore,
Hmm.
getting arrested on their, on the job,
Yeah.
being ripped away from their families when these are men that are, doing the best that they can to feed mouths at home.
Right.
Um, and so the whole pretense that, these people are in cartels or whatever, to me is just, it's like the start of like something really scary. Um, if you look at history, they say history always repeats itself. It's giving propaganda. It's giving fearing other people. It's giving
Yeah.
um, isolating certain groups of people. Like after 9/11, it was Muslim people, mostly Muslim men. Now, we're seeing a lot of Latino men and Hispanic people being isolated, excluded, removed, stripped from their families. And so, yeah, I think it's very, very scary. And I think that the answer is really having a more human approach to the way that we live in a society and organize ourselves as as a government.
Yeah. Well, and I think through your own story, you've shared as a human and as someone who felt less represented in an area where you grew up, in an area where you've traveled.
Mhm.
The thing that you really highlighted for us is you have always been doing the best that you can.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, right, we don't lead with that when it comes to policy, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to just talking to each other. There's really this divide that's being created. And so I'm curious from your past experiences and now looking at where we are today in 2025, how do you see the future of the travel industry of tomorrow?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. Well, for me, if I were to like go back to why I do public speaking and why I use my voice to create change, I would want to see more people of color having the experience of going abroad
Mhm.
with the possibility to safely return home
Yeah.
and not being kept in like some sort of like prison or center.
Yeah.
But I want to see more people of color experience living abroad because it will make them just more well-rounded individuals, more well-rounded human beings, being able to reach a further potential than they could have been if they got stuck in environments that were not necessarily serving them or stuck in trauma loops because trauma is brought down from generation to generation. And until you have the awareness and the consciousness to change it, then you get stuck in it and you don't necessarily you repeat the same pattern. So I would want to see more people that come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds experiencing living abroad. And when it comes to, everything that has to do with policies, I do hope that people kind of stand up and really take the time to have the awareness that these policies or the way that immigrants are being portrayed
Mm.
are intentional. They're not for nothing. These
Yeah.
people are being portrayed as bad or dangerous or a threat to society, when it's just your local friendly neighbor going to
Right.
work, working on a construction site, coming home to his family, celebrating his son's birthday on a Sunday. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
taking the time to take a step back and be like, do I actually believe that these people are bad, or am I being told a story that doesn't really align with my human values, that
Yeah.
doesn't really sit right with me in my heart, and that I don't necessarily want to, yeah, like follow. And I think one of the really good tools is education. So I think it's really important for us to educate ourselves, to read from different sources of media,
Mhm.
um, different, to see how history is repeating itself and understanding what feels right to me and what feels the most human,
Yeah.
which most of the time is openness, it's peaceful, it's love. And it's not even to be cheesy. It's like,
Yeah.
it's true. At the end of the day, that is what it is. It's like, it's not fear. It's not a lack of trust. It's not, thinking that other people are bad. It's all the contrary, right? So I think just like taking time to have that awareness and to cultivate that mindfulness
Mm.
and to see what we're being fed and to be like, hey, like actually I don't need to eat this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have this. Like I don't want to digest this because it doesn't feel like something I want to digest. I think just having that awareness and like standing up for our communities, having these hard conversations, having conversations and saying things that are hard, like, hey, like I'm a bit on the fence, like about immigration, and never really thought like that, but like this is really scaring me. And then, maybe somebody else with like a different point of view telling you, hey, like actually no, like I don't think you should think like that. They're, these things are intentional. They're meant for us to change the way that we perceive others.
Mhm.
Yeah, just having like hard conversations with the people that you trust and building communities and understanding what is happening, I think can go a long way because, you know, every social change movement has always started with human beings standing up to what's not right. When we say history repeats itself, whether it's like, the abolition of slavery or it's like anything like Black Lives Matter
Mhm.
or um, civil rights movement, just like people realizing and having the awareness that like, whoa, this is not okay.
Yeah.
There has to be that right now. People being like, whoa, wait a second, this
That's
is not
not
okay.
okay. Yeah. And I think you kind of touched on this where being willing to ask questions of each other and have that conversation and share our life experiences so that we understand why we're thinking the way we are and to slow down as a society and better understand each other human to human. I think is something that is dramatically missing in the policy making, especially here in the United States. And I think by sharing your experiences of how being open, being curious, going and exploring other countries, even when you may have felt like an outsider or maybe that you weren't quote unquote even welcome there, you still went for it. And it feels to me that by giving yourself the opportunity to have those experiences, it's really elevated how you perceive what's going on, but also how you can help break down those barriers and how you can break down those conversations and how you can be that voice
Mhm.
and help others see things differently and
Yeah.
really get out of that generational cycle of I think this way because and
Mhm.
taking that pause and well asking, do I really think this way? Am I really scared of this person? Is this really what's happening?
Mhm.
And not being so quick to react when something comes up. So I love that you were able to share that with us today and really diving deep into your life experiences and how that's shaped where you are and talking a little bit about your business. So, Laëtitia, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. This was nice. It was like a nice little chat, but very like intentional, refreshing, and I feel like it'll plant little seeds in people's minds and they'll be able to think about it and make it for themselves.
Yes, I love that. Well, that does bring us to the end of our journey today. And if you liked what you've heard and you want to hear more, please remember to subscribe, like, or comment. And just remember, here at the Rise Travel Institute, we do believe that conscious travel can create a more just and equitable world. So if you'd like to learn more, head on over to risetravelinstitute.org for more information on our educational programs. But until then, we'll be back soon with another episode. So keep roaming, keep learning, and continue to be a Rise Traveler. Bye-bye.